Joining us, just type new in the comments. We'd love to connect with you, answer any questions about church that you may have, and wherever you're joining us from, please let us know in the comments. We love seeing where all our Journey family is joining us from. Take a moment and hit that share button if you don't mind. Like this video. You can even tag a friend in the comments. It's like a really easy way to invite someone to church. And if you're joining us on YouTube, if you haven't subscribed, we'd love for you to hit that subscription button and that notification bell. That way you can know every single time that we go live. We just hit 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. It's amazing to see how God is using these platforms to help share the gospel and to reach people for Jesus. It's absolutely amazing. Today is the last Sunday of the month, and on the last Sunday of the month, we go out into our community and we are the hands and feet of Jesus. We don't have church inside of our buildings. We try to take church out into the community. So if you did that today, please post some pictures, tag us, so we can celebrate just what God did through you and what all is going on around us. And if you didn't, we'd love for you to join us next month so you can be a part of last Sunday. And we just want to take a moment and say thank you to everyone for your generosity. It's your generosity that helps us be able to do this, to close the doors on the last Sunday and to go out and to be the hands and feet of Jesus and make a difference in our community. So thank you so much. You can give by mail or you can hit the Give tab and give online digitally. That's the way my wife, Katie, and I give. And next week, we're starting a marriage series called Relationship Goals. No matter who you are, you're in a relationship, and this series applies to you. And today, we want to share a message from Dr. Greg Smalley from 2015. Check out this video.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hey, it's great to be here. What a beautiful place you have here. God, to be able to come to the ocean. I'm from Colorado Springs, so we have mountains, but to spend some time here at the ocean, I came with my two youngest kids, Garrison, who's 14, and then Annie, who's 8. And so we just had such a wonderful time yesterday on the beach all day. As a matter of fact, just digging sandcastles, saying to Pastor Darrell, my arms, I couldn't figure out why my arms were so sore. So, and then my fingernails, what is that? I mean, I don't know what's going on, but anyway, we had a great time. My wife, Erin, and I have been married 23 years, so she's with our two oldest daughters, Taylor, who's 21, and Murphy, who's 18. So right now they're in China working at the orphanage where we adopted our youngest daughter, Annie. So we were at the beach yesterday having fun. She's off doing ministry in China. She's very spiritual compared to me, so anyway, it's great to be here. Hey, I'd love to walk through one of my very favorite passages of Scripture on marriage, and it's not the kind of typical maybe passage out of Ephesians that we're used to when someone's going to talk about marriage. Actually, this is going to be out of Hosea. So if you have your Bibles, if you have your iPhone, your tablet, whatever you want to use, if you'll turn to Hosea, that's a book right between Daniel and Joel in the Old Testament. And if you'll turn to chapter 2, we're going to start at verse 14. So verses 14 through 23 is an amazing chapter about marriage because it's really the only place in the entire Bible that we find God operating in the role of husband trying to win back his wife, the children of Israel. And so if you're familiar at all with the story of Hosea, it might be easy to think, well, I'm not sure what this could say about me or my relationship with my spouse because I haven't been unfaithful. Because remember, God had Hosea marry Gomer, a prostitute, just to kind of parallel that between his relationship with the children of Israel. And where I want to begin, though, is to caution us that I think that unfaithfulness isn't just about infidelity. I think unfaithfulness is anytime our heart turns away from our spouse. Maybe it can be simply as being distracted. Maybe it's a season of working and being a workaholic. Maybe it's selfishness, unhealthy conflict, prioritizing kids or friends. So it's really anything that takes our focus, our heart away from our spouse onto something else is really being unfaithful. And I saw this in my own marriage really from the very beginning. You talk about running right into my own selfishness. It was on our honeymoon. Erin and I had the opportunity to go to Hawaii. And so I had never been before. I was very excited, kind of preparing for this. I'd spent a lot of time reading just travel brochures and books and just checking things out, just to figure out what are we going to be doing there. And every time I would look at something, I would see a gorgeous Hawaiian waterfall, this big waterfall dumping into this cool pool, and people would be jumping off waterfalls and swimming around. You know the kind I'm talking about? Just that gorgeous picture. So I told Aaron, I said, hey, when we're there, can we do this? Like, can we take a day and find a waterfall and swim around and jump off? And she said, yeah, sure, that's fine. So each morning I'd get up and go, hey, could we drive and find this? And she always had something else she would rather do. Let's go to this beach, or let's go shopping here. So it was the last day. And I said, honey, that was something really important to me. I said, can we go and find one of these? And so late in the afternoon, we drove off, and took us forever. We finally spot a waterfall way off in the distance and hike probably back a mile. But we get to this thing, and there's no one there, and it is absolutely perfect. Exactly what I had thought and wanted to find. And so I just, big, huge waterfall and a place where we could swim around. So I go tearing off into the water, and yet I don't hear anything behind me. So I turn around to see my wife right on the edge of the water. She's looking at something. She's reading something. I'm like, honey, we have no time. You got to come out. The water's perfect. She's kind of motioned me over. I'm like, what? We got to get going. And so she said, you got to see this. So she points to a little old sign. It was probably like 100 years old. I mean, it was that old. What do you think the sign said? No swimming. I asked this one time I was speaking at church, and someone yelled out, beware of sharks or something. But it was fresh water, so anyway. And so it said no swimming. And so I'm looking at her like, and? Because I'm convinced, really, if you boil it down, there are two types of people in a marriage. There are those who follow the rules, and there are those who don't, right? So let me see all the hands of the rule followers. Put your hands up. All right. Okay, what about the rule breakers? Let's see your hands. All right. You had 2 hands go up. That's dangerous, but that's cool. I like that. See, I'd do the same thing. See, rules to me, they're more suggestions, right? They're more encouragement, whatever. But for Aaron, it is the law. And so she's like, we're not going swimming. And I'm like, honey, I'm pretty sure that there's no one else around. We're not going to get arrested for swimming. We'll be all right. Let's just swim quick. We'll come out. But I could not get her off the bank. And so we started to discuss this. And it got a little bit more animated the more we discussed it, till finally it just broke out into a full-blown argument. I mean, I could not convince her, and this was it. I mean, this was our last opportunity. The sun's about to set. So I was so frustrated at my wife that I went, fine. I said, if this is your attitude, then this honeymoon is ruined for me. If you're not married, you may want to write that down as what not to say on your honeymoon. Just so that's free. That's a free tip. Because as you could imagine, I mean, she was hurt. You talk about a heart closing down. She was so mad at me that she takes off for the car. So I'm trying to catch her to say, I was joking. I was being funny, Well, my wife ran track in college, so I couldn't catch her. And you talk about being totally disconnected. I'll finish the story up here in a moment. But that's just a great example of my own unfaithfulness. In other words, boy, the selfishness, the unhealthy conflict. That's we can do this. So it's just not about infidelity. All of us can be unfaithful. And so starting in chapter 2, verse 14, watch what he does to win back his wife, the children of Israel. There's an amazing formula here. And I'm just going to kind of hit 5 things that really stand out to me when you read through this passage. So the very first thing, it says, therefore, so this is verse 14, therefore I'm going to allure her. I will lead her into the desert, and I will speak tenderly to her. So the very first thing that God does is he tenderly allures his wife. Allure, that's a great word. So how many love to fish? Any fishermen, fisherwomen here okay, yeah, a lot of us. All right, I love to do that. So you think about a lure is something that we might cast to try to get that fish to, turn towards and start to go after this thing. Well, that's basically what God is doing. That he's trying to allure his wife. He's trying to get her attention. She's been distracted by other gods. She's turned her attention. Her heart has been captivated by other things. And so he's trying to get her attention. So the way that he gets her attention is great. The first thing that he says he does is that he leads her into the desert. I don't know about you, but that's not the first thing that would come to my mind if I was really trying to lure my wife, is to take her out into the desert. I mean, that seems rather hot and pretty boring just with the sand. But to understand what he's doing, we have to remember that the desert is where his love story started with the children of Israel. Coming out of Egypt. See, in the desert, in the wilderness is where they really fell in love. And their relationship took off. And so picture it this way. Picture an old movie scene to where there's a big crowded room and a guy spots this girl that he's interested in. But maybe she's surrounded by some other guys. So he walks over there and maybe grabs her hand and leads her out into the veranda, maybe a balcony or something, to get her away. That's what God's doing. So he's trying to get her attention by, one, getting her out and away from other people, but taking her back to a place that she was very familiar with. So now he's got her attention, and to really allure her, what he uses is tenderness. There's something amazing about tenderness. So as Aaron and I were totally disconnected, so she's not speaking to me now, so we drive back to our hotel in total silence. Don't you hate those moments when your wife isn't talking to you or your husband isn't talking to you? I just hate those moments of that level of disconnection. But it was bad. But we had already bought some tickets to a luau. And so I don't know how we communicated that we needed to eat, whatever. But we end up in this big, huge auditorium. It's probably literally the size of this room. And there are these bench seats, and we're all just jammed into this place. Like, it just felt like a sardine, just crammed in there. But Erin, next to me, that wasn't a bad thing. That was actually a good thing. But she's kind of got her back towards me. So, she's not talking to me, her back's to me. So I'm thinking, this is really bad. And then the thought hits me that, man, this is our last night in Hawaii. And if there's going to be any hope for later on that night, I better do something here to reconnect with my wife, or it's going to be a very lonely last evening in Hawaii. So I wish I could tell you that I was thinking about my wife and what I said, but really I was thinking about it later on. And but what do? I mean, we just were brand new married. I'd never encountered this before. She will not talk to me. And so I just remember sitting there going, I got to do something. And then I remember that I had sat through many of my dad's conferences. My dad, a guy named Gary Smalley. Have you guys ever heard of Gary Smalley? Okay, yeah. Now, be honest, how many of you thought you were coming to hear Gary Smalley? So it happens everywhere I go. They're looking like, who are you? And I'm used to the disappointment. But anyway, so I'd sat through a lot of his events before, and so he talked about this. And I'm like, yeah, that's right. What did he say? And then I remembered he talked about being tender. So he said, when your wife or your husband is mad at you, just be soft, be tender, as a way to begin to open a heart back up. And so I thought, I could do this. I can be tender. But I mean, I was literally like, how do you do that now? And because I had already tried to put my hand on her leg, and she kind of went, swatted away. I'm like, oh boy. And so I don't know. The only thing that came to my mind was just maybe to put my arm around her and just maybe barely rub her shoulder, like being tender or something. So I kind of, pulled because remember, we're jammed in there. So I put my arm around her, not looking at her because I didn't think that would help. And so I just started barely just rubbing her shoulder really, really light, thinking that should warm her back up to me. And so as I'm rubbing her shoulder, I'm waiting and I'm kind of looking, but just nothing. I mean, I'm rubbing away and no, she won't respond in any way. And so I'm thinking, wow, big trouble here. So I just keep rubbing her shoulder, and again, I take a quick look, and nothing. So now I'm thinking, okay, man, all these years, he's lied to us. My dad, he's lied to every one of us. This stuff doesn't work, and, I'm thinking, well, I don't know what to do now. So now I'm just thinking, well, if I make eye contact and actually say something, maybe that'll help. So as I'm continuing to rub her shoulder, I go to lean in to say something to her. And by the way, I am not making this up. What I'm about to tell you honestly happened. I don't know how it happened. It just happened. So as I'm rubbing her shoulder and I lean in to say something, my eyes catch the eyes of the woman sitting next to her. And she's got this weird look on her face. And all of a sudden, as I realized that I had been rubbing her shoulders the whole time. Talk about being unfaithful for the second time. My execution was not good. The principle, though, is right. And that's why I love that God is showing that a part of the way that he's alluring his wife is through tenderness. And so one of the questions, I think, how we make this practical and relevant is to ask one another, what is it that I do? And when I do it, really allures you, causes you to stop, maybe turn towards me, to draw in. What is it that I do that really captivates you? I asked, my wife that, and I said, what do I do? And it was really odd what she shared with me. She said, when you are honest and share the struggles that you have. She goes, I know that you face temptations. I know you go through hard times. She said, when you share those things, it actually causes me to lean in. And I thought that was the weirdest thing. Like, really, of all the things I do, when I just share my weakness or ways I've been tempted, you like that? She's like, yes. And I'm thinking, you're lying to me. I don't know what is going on. But anyways, that's what she said. Mine was much simpler. I said, hey, when you're just being playful and when we're laughing together, I said, that just draws me right to you. Totally allures me when you were just being playful. And what I love about my wife is she does this all the time. Like, literally, a couple of weeks ago, my sister was in town, and so my sister loves to watch real suspenseful movies. Not the full, horror movies, not that stuff. Just kind of scary movies, real suspenseful. And so I'm like, sure, fine. So we're watching this movie. My wife had to be gone that evening. And so we're just down watching this movie, and I'm seated right next to, we have this sliding glass door in our basement. And so I had to open the door so my sister's dog could come in and out. And so we've got this door open, big glass, right at the scariest moment of this movie. All of a sudden, my sister screams and goes, "There's someone at the door." And I went, huh? And I look, and there is a person all in black with a wool cap pulled all the way over their face, holding a knife. And I'm just looking at this, trying to process, what do I do? Because I can see they're inching towards the door to come in. And my kids all put a quilt over their head. I'm like, how's that going to help? And I could not process this fast. And I'm just sitting there going, we're about to die by Slender Man or whoever is standing there. It was weird. And so all of a sudden, I'm looking at this person, and they're kind of shaking up and down. And all of a sudden, I realized it was my wife, and she was laughing, and that's what was causing her. Sissy pulls the thing up. She's like, surprise. And I'm just thinking, wow, you almost killed me, because I am older, and my heart is definitely weaker. But at the same time, that's the stuff I love. I felt more loved in my life then than probably ever before. It's weird. So that may not be what allures you, but that you get to decide what does that. But ask each other that. What is it that allures you when I do that? So now God's got her attention, but now what he wants is her heart. And so listen to what he does. In verse 15, it says that I will make the valley of Acor a door of hope. So what God is doing is he's going to promise her hope and safety. So I will make the valley of Achor a door of hope. Again, it's one of those, why? What does that have to do with anything? The valley of Achor. Well, to understand what he's doing here, we have to understand what the valley of Achor is. See, when God led the children of Israel, his wife, out of Egypt into the wilderness, eventually now into the promised land. So now they're in the promised land. Things are going well. But this was the place, the valley of Achor, where they sinned. Achan held back gold. Remember that from that story? They lost for the first time in battle. I mean, it became a very painful place for the children of Israel. They actually renamed this the Valley of Trouble. So what God is saying is that I'm going to take what has been called a valley of trouble in our relationship, and I'm going to rename this the Valley of Hope. Hope is a powerful thing inside of a relationship. As I've worked with thousands of couples, boy, I've watched that sometimes hope in a marriage can keep it together for a season. But sometimes that's all that they have to hold on to is that hope. And that's what God is saying is that, listen, I know that we've been through some really hard times, but we're going to make it. We're going to make it through. Our marriage, this marriage that we have, it's going to last. So now he's established hope, and what he does then is he goes right into to establish then safety in their relationship. And let me read what he says. Let me tell you why this is so important for a relationship. In verse 18 it says that I will make for you a covenant on that day with the beasts of the field, the birds of the air, and the creeping things along the ground. And I will abolish the bow and the sword and the war from the land, and I will make you lie down in safety. Erin and I, my wife and I, the first couple years of our marriage, although I thought it would be easy, and I was getting my doctorates in marriage and family, growing up in this amazing home, legacy of marriage and relationship with God. But to be honest with you, that we struggled really, really bad to the point, and this was about 2 years into our marriage, I really thought that we were one more argument away from my wife leaving me. Just the way that we tried to work through conflict, it didn't go well. And the more and more that this lasted, see what would happen is that our hearts began to close towards each other. And what I've noticed about relationships, that over time a closed heart will what, do you think? After a while that our heart stays closed, what's it going to eventually do? It's going to eventually harden. The one and only time that Jesus talks about talks about divorce in the Bible, he said that Moses permitted you to divorce because why? Because of the hardness of your what? Because of the hardness of your heart. You see, a hardened heart is the wrecking ball of a marriage. When a heart truly becomes hardened, a marriage won't last. It just can't. The good news is that I've watched hearts open and marriages be restored. So, I mean, that absolutely can happen. But that's what began to happen here in their relationship, is that God has seen that his wife's heart had hardened towards him. When a heart feels safe, it will open. That's probably one of the greatest things I've learned about marriage, is that when a heart truly feels safe, when it feels like I live in a marriage that feels like the safest place on earth, it's going to open. And that's what he's doing. He's saying that I want you to feel so safe. As a matter of fact, I'm going to make a pact with the animals. They're not going to bother you. I'm going to get rid of the war. I'm going to take the swords and the bows and out. In other words, what he's saying is that he's going to take war out of their relationship. See, conflict is a great thing for a marriage. I know that seems counterintuitive. Conflict is a great thing. Combat is a bad thing. See, Aaron and I were stuck in this bad, nasty cycle of combat. The way that we tried to handle conflict wasn't working. As a matter of fact, that's why I wrote the book. It's called Fight Your Way to a Better Marriage, and I think it's out there in the lobby. It's a whole book just on how do we create a marriage that feels like the safest place on earth, just based on how we deal with differences in arguments and in conflict. So what he's saying is, I'm going to get rid of the combat, not the conflict. That's a good thing, because I want you to feel safe. Because, see, he wants her heart back open to him. And the evidence of that is in 15, where it says, "Then she will sing as in the days of her youth, as in the day that she came up out of Egypt." You see, when we come together to sing, we do that because we have open hearts, right? As a matter of fact, I don't know if this is true, but I believe that we usually sing before we share a message because we want hearts to be open. And singing is a very open-hearted activity. And so to me, there's evidence of that. He's got her attention. He's allured her by being tender. And now he's really created hope, especially safety, saying, you can open your heart to me. And now that he's got her open heart, look at what he does. Number 3 is that God restores their relationship. So I've got your attention. Now I've got your heart open to me. Now I'm going to restore this relationship. The first way that he does that is to forgive her. It's a beautiful picture. It says in verse 16 that in that day, says the Lord, that you will call me my husband, and no longer will you call me my Baal. Again, it's confusing to us because we don't understand what that means. But to understand why this is significant, why does it matter if you call me my husband versus my Baal? Because 15 times throughout the Old Testament, you find the phrase my Baal. You see the word Baal. Baal means husband, but not in the loving, caring sense. When it's used as Baal, husband means cruel, master, lord, someone who's lording over us in a very cruel way. You see, when the Israelites turned their attention to Baal, to reap the benefits from Baal, it happened in very cruel ways. They'd have to like whip their backs and stuff to reap the benefits of Baal. And so what God is saying here is that I want to forgive you, that no longer will you experience my harshness. Instead, that you're going to experience my caringness, my loving. I'm again your caring husband because I forgive you. What do you need to forgive your spouse for? There are things that happen every day that I do that my wife has to continue to forgive me. But forgiveness is a powerful thing. And it's how God begins to restore their relationship. Then from there, he says in verse 15 that I will give her back her vineyards. You see, once he forgives her, then he wants to give her back something that he took away. When Aaron and I were sitting in that dark room, and it was really awkward now after I was rubbing that other woman, I had to ask both my wife and that other woman sitting next to her to forgive me. And luckily they both did. But then what was so funny is that only as women can do, my wife and this woman started talking. 5 seconds later, they're in this deep conversation. Now they're best of friends. And literally, this is 23 years ago, and this woman was probably mid-50s at the time. To this day, we still get a Christmas card from this woman, I swear. And so she always has all these neat things to say to Aaron, and always at the bottom, it says, P.S. Greg, I'm still waiting for you. So, wow, that is my life. So once forgiveness happens, then what God does is that he wants to give back. See, a vineyard, that was the children of Israel. That was their prized possession. They'd grown these amazing vineyards, and when they were unfaithful to God, he took those away. And now he's saying that I want to restore this relationship. I want to return what was taken away. It made me think about times in my own life I'm sure there's been many things that I've done or maybe did in the early years of our relationship with my wife, Erin, that maybe I've stopped doing, maybe inadvertently, maybe on purpose. Either way, what is it? I asked her that. I said, what are some things that I have done in the past that you loved that no longer happened? It was really interesting. She said, I love when early on our marriage, when I'd come to you with a problem where I was hurting, you did such a great job of just listening. You'd just sit there for hours at times and just listen and just give me great eye contact. And you wouldn't try to fix me or solve the problem or tell me what I could do differently. You just really listened. And she said, I love that. So I've been working on that. Because it's hard, right? Guys, is that hard? Because we like to show love by doing what? By fixing something, right? But very different than what she wanted. As a matter of fact, this guy who was in a marriage seminar kind of heard this same kind of theme and really convicted him. He was thinking about the things that he had done throughout his early years of marriage that he just kind of quit doing, especially like he thought, I used to give my wife a card just for no reason or bring her home flowers. chocolate, whatever. Just I used to give her these little gifts, and he stopped doing that. Just got busy working. And so convicted that he decided on Monday that he was going to leave work early and he was going to come home and surprise his wife. And so he stopped off at a store and he bought a card and he actually wrote in it versus underlining, right? Because guys, just because we underline something twice doesn't really mean better, right? Well, ladies, is that true? Like you like us to write in them, right? I know, it's hard to believe that. I like sometimes underline 3 times because I'm like, I really love you, But he wrote in his card, he got her flowers, maybe some candy, whatever. So he drove home and he thought, hey, instead of just pulling in the garage, I'm gonna really surprise her. I'm gonna do this right. So he goes to the front door and kind of rings the doorbell, and he's waiting. The door opens and he kind of steps forward and thrusts these gifts towards his wife and says, honey, I love you. And she takes one look at all of this and just starts to cry. And he's thinking, not quite what I expected. Are you okay? She goes, oh, sweetie. She goes, thank you. But it's just been the worst day. She goes, the kids have been terrible. She goes, the dishwasher broke, and now you come home drunk. So I'm only telling you this because as we start to restore some of these things that maybe we hadn't done in a while, our spouse may be a little suspicious, all right, and suspect of what's really going on. So it's okay, hang in there, okay? So again, listen to what he's done. So God has allured his wife. It's got her attention. He's now reestablished hope, safety, because he wants her heart open. Now that he's got her heart open, he forgives her. He's actually given her back something that he's taken. And now number 4 is that he renews their marriage by laying a fresh foundation. It says in verse 19 and 20, and I will betroth you to me forever. I will betroth you to me in righteousness and justice, in steadfast love and mercy. I will betroth you to me in faithfulness. To me, what's interesting is here's what he's not doing at this moment. I know that it's very easy when we go through hard times just to want to move on. Just to say, you know what, let's just keep going. Let's just move on. Let's pretend like nothing ever happened. But I think that's one of the worst things that we can do. What he's doing is he's taking her all the way back to when they were engaged, when they began to build their marriage, and saying, I want to go all the way back and rebuild our marriage upon a fresh foundation. Now for him, these key qualities, though, these characteristics that he wants as a part of their new foundation are things like righteousness and justice and steadfast love and mercy and faithfulness. So he's saying that I don't just want to move on and pretend like nothing happened. Let's go all the way back to the beginning, rebuild, and these are the things that we'll use to rebuild our relationship. I think that's one of the best things that we can do within our marriages annually even, but definitely as we go through different seasons at times just to talk about, you know what, as we enter into this new chapter of our marriage, as we go into this new season, or maybe we're coming off of a really hard time, what is our marriage going to be about? What's important to us? Like if I was to ask you guys, if you could only yell out one thing, okay, one thing that you believe is key to having a great marriage, what would you yell out? So you just yell out some of these things. What's important? I heard the word kitchen. Was that accurate? Yeah, so a kitchen is good. Oh, communication, is that what it was? All right, I heard kitchen. It's almost lunchtime, so that's what, yes, all right, that makes a lot of sense. So this is in now, and we'll all go and eat, okay? So communication, good. What else? Kindness, honesty, friendship. Yes, that was all at the same time. Those were all good, I'm sure. Yeah, so there's lots of things, right, that go into creating a great relationship. And so that's what he's doing, is saying, now for us, what are those key things? And my wife and I, once a year, we get away alone. And that's one of the things that we talk about. In this season that we're walking into, what's important to us? What are we really going to focus on? What needs to be a part of our foundation right now? And I love doing that. It just keeps our relationship strong. The last thing that he does, so this is verses 20 through 23, is that God offers his wife the most intimate relationship possible. He's got her attention. He's created safety. He's forgiven her. He has returned what he had taken from her. He's now established a new foundation built on some important pieces, and now he's saying, I want to offer you the deepest, most intimacy that I can give. Here's what he says, and you will know the Lord, and in that day I will respond, declares the Lord, and I will respond to the skies, and they will respond to the earth, and the earth will respond to the grain, to the new wine, and to the oil, and they will respond to Jezreel, and I will plant her for myself in the land, and I will show my love to the one I called not my love. So now he's saying this relationship of ours, now that we have been restored, that I'm going to hold nothing back, that I'm going to offer myself in every way, shape, and form. As a matter of fact, the key to understanding this is that first line that he uses, that he says, then you will know the Lord. Knowing someone is important. Like, it's really good for me to communicate with my wife. You guys yelled that out. That was one of the ones you said. I want to keep updated. I want to keep current. I want to keep relevant in terms of what's going on for her. And I want to be known. I want to offer what's going on in my life. So being known and knowing someone, that's a good thing for a marriage. That's not what he's talking about, though. The only other times that he uses that word to know was in verses like where it says that Adam knew Eve before, and then she had a son. It said that Joseph didn't know Mary before she gave birth to Christ. So really he's talking about the most intimate level between a husband and a wife. He's like, now all this has happened, and now what I want to offer is every single part of me, my mind, my heart, and now my body to you. And so all of a sudden now you see this great restoration in intimacy within this relationship. I just think it's a fantastic formula. I mean, just again, let me just review these things. Because see, in Hosea 3:1 it says, the Lord said to me, so he's talking now to Hosea, go and show your love to your wife again. Love her as the Lord loves the Israelites. So man, as a husband, I want to memorize these things. I mean, I have written 16 books on marriage, and they pale in comparison to what God is showing that he did to win back his wife. That he, first of all, tenderly allured her. He's wooing his wife back, and he's using tenderness to do that. That he's rebuilt their relationship by offering hope, by offering safety, because he wants her heart open. When someone feels safe, I promise their heart will open to you. What do you need to do to create a marriage that feels like the safest place on earth? He's forgiven her, so now he's restored their relationship. He's shifted from punishing her to not only forgiving her, but then restoring back what he's taken. He's renewed their relationship. He's started over. He's gone all the way back and saying, this is what's important. Let's rebuild our relationship off of these core things. And then finally, he's offered unconditional, complete intimacy to her. I know for Aaron and I, we, as I told you, I mean, we kind of went from this honeymoon into our marriage, and those first couple years, it just was really, really hard. And I'm so thankful for examples like this, because we persevered through that. I mean, it was hard. I would be lying to you if I told you that there weren't moments that we were like, I don't think this is going to work out. And yet we had we had a mentor couple that really stepped in. I'll never forget, seriously, the night that this woman called, this kind of our mentor couple. She called looking for Aaron. And she called, and I picked up the phone, and this is the days before cell phones, and she said, hey, is Aaron there? And I said, no, she's gone. And this woman went, oh, Greg, She goes, I am so sorry. I so was afraid that this was going to happen. And I went, what now? Because Aaron's gone to the store. I said, what are you talking about? And she goes, well, this is a little awkward, but she goes, we've just been noticing you guys, and we're pretty convinced you're not doing well. She goes, why don't you guys come over tonight and let's talk, and why don't you really tell us what's going on? That was the first time in 2 years that we finally shared that we weren't doing good at all. And that's, boy, I tell you, God used them to get us on a whole different path. And you talk about winning your wife back. It took a couple years, but now we've been married 23 years, and we get to travel around, and we counsel people together, and we get to do marriage conferences together. And we're not perfect, but man, I love what God has done in our marriage, and He can do that same thing. And here's a great formula for doing that. God, we come before you with such thankful hearts. God, thank you for your love for us. Thank you for the way in which you love us, that we never have to worry if there's something going on in heaven. We never have to worry that you're not up there looking down over us, Lord, loving us unconditionally. You say that you will never leave us, nor will you ever forsake us, that you have loved us with an everlasting love. And God, we thank you. We're so grateful for that, Lord. Help us to love like that within our relationships, within our marriage, God. Lord, show us how that we can incorporate these things that you laid out in Hosea to become a regular part of our relationship, God. Thank you for that model. Lord, I pray for the relationships here. Lord, I pray for the marriages here in this church. God, that they will reflect the kind of relationship that you created. Marriage was your idea. This is not a human creation. This was what you created, Lord. And I'm sorry for the times that we have not stewarded this thing that you've given us better, Lord. So, Lord, I pray for the marriages here, God, that when others look at them, that it's what draws them here, what draws people into a relationship with you. Lord, help us to love well. I ask these things in your precious name. Amen.
What a powerful message about relationships that we just heard. If you have any prayer or have any questions about anything, don't hesitate to message us. You can call up to the church. You can email info@thejourneyfamily.com. We're committed to your journey, and we're here for you. Thank you so much for joining us today for our special Last Sunday worship experience, and we can't wait to see you at any of our campuses next week at 10 a.m.